just says Alicia Nolan. Okay. Connecting. Here there's Stampin' Neighbor, Alicia Dolan here at Creating in My Corner. Thank you for joining me on this Sunday. Hold on one moment. I'm going to make a little adjustment. Yes, I'm here. Okay, so I got my cameras all set up and I'm excited to do the video tonight, but I, as always, am not 100% sure about how my technology is going to work. So hopefully it will all go smoothly. I'm trying to watch for your comments kind of over on the side because I have my phone over here so that I'm not quite so bright and shiny. And then I'm going to switch to the other camera when I start to make the card. So this is July 3rd, 2022, believe it or not. And the mini catalog is live. So there's a July to December mini catalog. Let's see, I'm not sure where I put them, but I have a box here if you need one. And there's also celebration. So before we get started, I just wanted to share with you a couple of things that I'm going to be doing. So every Sunday, thank you, Kim. That's super helpful because I can't see the computer from where I am. I had to hook it up on the other side so that it can connect to the webcam for the directions. So then I just have my phone for when I'm talking to you. So what I did was I ordered Christmas sets. And so every Sunday in July, we're going to make a Christmas card together. So this is the first one. It's called Peace to You. And I'm actually going to use this card in my upcoming class that's on July 12th. And we're going to make a really cool shaker card. So if you haven't signed up for that yet, you will want to sign up for my email and let me know that you want to come to the class. The class is $25. You get to, you make 8 cards, 2 each of 4 designs. And it's a lot of fun. July 12th or 14th. It's a Thursday. No, I am not 100% sure. Let's see. Okay, I have to check my calendar real quick because I want to make sure you have the right. It's the 14th. You're right. It's the 14th. And the same night is the paper craft party on Zoom. So you can come at 10 o'clock and make your 8 cards. And then when we get to the paper craft party on Zoom, you can make a whole bunch more. So it's the 14th. Sorry about that date. I've been trying to plan a lot of things. I'm going to have a garage sale and all kinds of other stuff going on. So keeping my dates straight has been difficult. All right, so let's turn the camera around and I am going to show you what we're doing tonight. So bear with me just a minute. And I think everything is all set up. Okay, so hopefully you can still hear me and see me. I am going to check real quick to try and make sure. All right, it looks like everything is working exactly the way it should. So if you can't see me or hear me, would you just send me a quick message and let me know? Otherwise, we are gonna start making this card right here. And I think it turned out really pretty. I hope you can see that. I know it's a little bit bright down here, but I haven't found a way to soften the light and get enough light at the same time. So what we're gonna do is we've got a piece of basic black here. And this piece is cut 4 1/4 by 11. And then I already scored it here at 5 1/2. So if you were starting from scratch, you would be taking a piece of black cardstock that's 8 1/2 by 11. And you would cut it right down the center here at 4 1/4 and score it at 5 1/2. And then we are going to fold that in half right on that score line. And then I'm going to use my bone folder to press that down. Now, here's something tricky. I was camping last week, as you may have noticed on my Facebook page, and I left about half of my supplies that I usually use in the camper. So I'm going to have to go back for those, but I still wanted to do the video tonight. So I'm going to show you the steps. If you notice I'm using different tools than I usually use, that would be why. So here's our card base. And next, we're going to do our stamping. So I have a piece of white here that is 3 by 4 1/4. And I put my stamp tonight on an acrylic block, and this is block E. Now, in general for this, I would probably use my Stamparatus because the image is rather large and I want to make sure that I get all those little spots, but I'm just going to ink it up really good and hope for the best. So I'm going to use Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And I put some new ink on here today. I don't know if you can see, but it's really shiny. So I'm just going to press it carefully on my stamp and hopefully not get too much ink, which looks like that's exactly what's happening. But we're going to try it and see what happens. If not, I always have more pieces of white paper around here. All right, so that looks like it's inked up pretty good. Probably better than it should be. And so let's try and stamp this and see what we get. And since I don't have my Stamparatus, I am going to stamp on this Stampin' Pierce mat. This you usually use for photopolymer, but since I don't have my grid sheets, I'm going to use it tonight. On the back of it, you can see that I have used it for piercing tools before. I try to keep the back for piercing and the front with the little logo for stamping. And just that saves me in case I want to stamp something. I don't want to stamp it on that back part where there's little holes because it might miss a spot because of those holes. All right, now I'm going to try to line this up so hopefully my head won't get in front of the camera. I'm nervous because I'm trying to line it up just right. And then I'm going to press it in the center. Now I'm not pressing super hard like to crush it into the mat, but I am pressing firmly. And we're going to peel that up. And it is a little bit off to the side and I can see where some of those little dots got in there. So if you are worried about that, you could always stamp your image first on a larger piece of basic white and then cut around it. But I'm going to leave it as it is for now. Now, because I left my chamois behind in my to-go bag of stamping, I'm going to use my Stampin' Mist and a scrub. I meant to check and see if this is still in the catalog, but I cannot find my catalog since I've been home. So I know I was trying to plan out my class for this month and I took it somewhere. I'm hoping it's just somewhere upstairs, but I don't know for sure. So I will look later and see if this Stampin' Scrub is still in the catalog, and I'll let you know if that's still available or not. Okay, so here is my stamped image, and you can see that it did ink up a little too much. So around my windows and here, you can see I got a little too much ink. But I don't think the person getting the card will know unless they are an avid stamper and they already have this stamp set. So I'm going to continue on. Now next, I'm going to stamp on this piece of white, and this is a half inch strip. It's just a leftover piece that I have. And I like to use these up if I can. And they're usually the perfect size for some little sentiment. So we're going to stamp Peace to You at Christmas. It's such a pretty stamp set, Kim. I really like it. And I'm excited to make a shaker card with it. I just got, I didn't have as much time to stamp today, but I know that I will soon. You know what I'm going to do? I'm noticing that my ink is it's a little bit too inky. It doesn't seem like that'd be possible, but it is. I'm going to clean this stamp off. So if you have an ink pad that gets a little too much ink, sometimes they come with a little too much, and sometimes they get a little too much afterwards. I'm going to grab a piece of copy paper. And this is just regular copy paper, printer paper. I'm going to fold it in half just because it's a little bit thinner than Stampin' Up paper. And I'm just going to press my ink pad down and try to get some of that extra ink off of there. See how wet that was? It was probably much too inky. Let's see. Yep, that's better. Okay, so now it doesn't look as wet, and hopefully I'll get a little better image. So I need to cut another piece because this one even bled through onto the back. Well, we're gonna just go with that one. And I will stamp the sentiment here. Or I do have these extra ones that I stamped earlier. So here you can see the difference. This is how it should look, and this is what I ended up with. So really, unless you know the stamp set, you might not notice the difference. And I will definitely use both of these in some cards. I have been neglectful of my Christmas card making the last couple of years, and I really, really want to send out Christmas cards this year. Okay, so see how that's a much neater ink. Let's see how it turns out on our. Okay, that's much better. I'm much happier with my images this time. Okay, So then I'm going to take this, and this was already cut this way from when I cut this one. So I'm just going to trim off that other edge. And when I do this, I try to line up my scissors with a spot that's directly across from where the other mark was. And I push them in just a hair and then turn them until it looks like they're about even. That's what I found is the best way for me to get a fairly even point on each side. And then because this end got smooched up a little bit, I'm just going to trim across it. There we go. So there's our sentiment. Use the other one you said. I saw that, Kim. And I'm going to have to trim it a little bit, I think, because or I'll just make the second part a little bit bigger. Or I'll trim it. I don't know what I'll do. We'll see in just a minute. I do think that one looks a little bit nicer. So let's, you know what, before I even go on, I'm going to throw that one out because I know that it won't make me happy. So I'm going to use this one I stamped earlier. And here is a piece of, this is 3/4 inch basic black. So I'm going to turn this stamped image over. I'm going to add a little glue to the back. This is sometimes what happens as I'm creating things live. And sometimes that's why it takes me a long time to finish some of my projects, because I'm not always completely satisfied with how they're turning out. Okay, and then I'm going to trim the ends. So I'm going to kind of do the same thing. Line up my scissors and turn it until it looks like I've got just the right angle and trim it off. And then I can do the same thing going back the other direction. So there is my sentiment. And I will have to trim this one just a bit because I've already cut the piece of black that goes around it, or I would have to cut another piece of black. So either way, I have to do a little bit of trimming. Now we need it to be 3 by 4 1/4. So here is my Stampin' trimmer. And I'm just going to line this in here. And I know that it's 3 1/4, so I'm just going to cut 1/8 off each of those sides. And I think if my math is right, that will get me the size that I want. Hopefully. Now, when you're trimming, one of the nice things about this Stampin' Up! Trimmer is there are measurements on both sides. So I can put it here at the 1/8 without having to measure the whole thing and subtract to figure out where I need to trim it. I hope that makes sense. I'm not 100% sure it does. So now I need to trim it at 4 1/4. Then I do have another one of those little extra bits of white that I can use later. Okay, so there our trimming is done. So we've got our stamped image, our sentiment, and our card base so far. Now I'm going to emboss the piece that goes on front. So I'm going to use my Big Shot. Let's see, and it just barely fits in my space here. Now, because I'm using the Big Shot, I need to use this plate here. It comes with a plate like this. The newer Stampin' Cut emboss machine doesn't have this plate. It has separate plates, which is kind of nice, so you don't have to guess about which one you need. They always give you the directions with them, but with this older one, I find that sometimes I have to change the sandwich a little bit. So I need this silicone rubber on here first. And then I'm using the mortar, let's see, Brick and Mortar 3D embossing folder. This is one of my absolute favorite embossing folders. I use this one all the time. And then I have a piece of 4 by 5 1/4 basic white. And on the front of these, there is a line. And if you line your paper up with that line, you can line it up either way. I want my bricks to go this way today. Then you'll know that your rows of brick are going to be straight, or whatever embossing image you're using. So then I just close it up and turn it so that the fold goes in first. And then I need a clear plate over top, and I can push it in until my handle starts to turn. And I'm going to lift this up a little bit because I don't want it to bang into my camera stand. And I'm just going to roll it forward and then back again, just so that I don't have to yank it out on this side. I don't see that anyone has any questions. If you have any questions for me about embossing or the card that I'm making, just let me know in the comments and I can answer them when we get done. All right, I'm going to move this out of the way. And when we open up our embossing folder, what we'll have is this. And hopefully you can see, even in the bright light, how cool that looks. Like a little brick wall. Okay, so now we've got this, and we're almost there with our layers. We're going to put black. That's 3 1/4 by 4 1/2 behind here. Add our sentiment, and then we'll put some ribbon on and we'll be done. So on the inside of a dark card, I always like to put a sheet of either white or very vanilla, depending on what color I use on the front. So we're going to turn that over and add some liquid glue. Now, when I use the liquid glue, I always do just a fine line around the edge. And then I do squiggle in the middle. I do a little bit different when I do the embossed part. So I'll show you that in just a minute. So we're going to attach this on the inside. And you could stamp this first if you wanted to, if you're going to add a sentiment to the inside. but I usually leave mine blank on the inside. Okay, so there's the inside piece. And then we're going to attach this brick embossed white next. And now when I do this one, there's spots where it raises up and lowers down. So instead of going straight around the edges, I just do a little squiggle because I want to make sure that I get enough glue on there that the raised part and the lower part, the hills and the valleys, are all covered. And then I'll do a little squiggle in the middle still. And then we can line it up so that that part sits right in the center of the front. And then we're going to attach this little church image to the basic black. And we'll do it the same way. We'll do a little line around the edges and a squiggle in the middle. And you just want thin lines when you're using the liquid glue. You don't want any heavy globs or anything like that, because it will warp your paper. Okay, so there's this, and then we're gonna add some ribbon. And I noticed today that my box of glue dots were in my bag. That's another thing I'm without. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my snips, and these are the little dots that come in my paper pumpkin, but there's always a few extra. So what I'm going to do is I like to bend them when I'm taking them off so that they kind of pop off a little bit by themselves. And then I just pick the edge up with my scissors. And I am going to place a dot right about here on my ribbon. And then I'm going to trim the other side. And I can peel the back off and stick that ribbon where I want it to go. And then I'll turn that over. And I'm going to put 2 more dots on, one on either side to hold that ribbon down. So bend your mini glue dots and pick them up just with the tip of your scissors. If I had my take your pick tool, I'd be using that. And one on this side. And then before I press them down, I try to make sure that they're about the same distance from the bottom. That way they look even going across. And I can just push both of those down. And then on the front, I'm just going to slide this ribbon underneath. And I'm going to tie a little knot. So we're not really tying a bow this time. We're just tying a little knot. Just like that. And then I can trim the ends. Navy would look good with this too. I almost chose that, and to be honest, I can't remember why I decided to go with the black instead, but navy would be really, it would be really pretty with this. Okay, so now we're going to turn this over, and I'm going to add some Stampin' Dimensionals to the back. I'm kind of getting to the end of my sheet here, so I'm going to trim the edges up and use those. And I'm going to put one on each corner and then one in the middle. Okay, and then I feel like I'm saying and then a lot tonight. I don't know if I'll try to stop doing that. So next, we're going to place that right in the center. And to put this little saying on, I wanted it to go down here in the corner. So what I did was around the edges of my, you could use mini Stampin' Dimensionals, of course, but around the edges of your regular size dimensionals, you'll find that you can cut them to form different sizes. So what I did was I used these ones along the side and I just put them as close to the edge as I could without going over along the bottom. And I put 2 on there. And then I took my liquid glue and I put a little bit across the top. So now when we peel our backs off, we can flip that over and it can go right here in the corner. And the edges are off here on the bottom so that it sits in just the right spot. So that is our card for tonight. I think it's really cute. It's fairly simple, quick and easy. If you could make a bunch of these fairly quick, especially if you use the Stamparatus and just stamped a whole bunch of these sheets. So I hope that you enjoyed that and that you have your mini catalog. If you don't have the mini catalog for July through December, let me know and I will ship one to you. Or I can drop it off if you're close by within Genesee or Oakland County. Thank you for joining me tonight for Stampin' Sunday. I hope that you are enjoying the beautiful weather and getting some crafting done. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you next Sunday if I don't see you before. Happy stamping, everyone.